You see, emotional abuse changes the brain's delicate chemistry, boosting hormones responsible for things like survival and suppressing those important happy hormones that are responsible for our emotional well-being. But the good news is that the brain is flexible and you absolutely can get back to your happy place. So to expedite healing and help rewire your brain, be sure you're including the activities that boost those happy hormones in your daily routine. And I'm sharing 10 of them with you today. Let's get to it. There's still a lot we don't know about how things like insults and abuse impact our brain chemistry. What we do know is that trauma impacts our stress response system, and it especially has an impact on adrenaline, cortisol, and oxytocin. And we're going to focus on oxytocin today because it's one of those ever important happy hormones. Childhood trauma actually decreases oxytocin in the brain, and it can affect how oxytocin receptors work, even into adulthood. So, no surprise, trauma has a lasting impact. We'll talk more about oxytocin soon, but what's important to know now is that it serves as a protective buffer against stress. Lower oxytocin levels could mean less protection and adaptability to stress. So for those of you who have experienced trauma as a child and then ended up in a toxic relationship as an adult, and this is very common, understand that you may have entered that relationship with less protection and adaptability to stress because of reduced oxytocin. So if you can relate to that, be sure to pay close attention when we get to the tips for increasing the happy hormone oxytocin. But for now, if you're wondering if the word trauma applies to you, it probably does. See, trauma is much less about the severity of the incident, which can be subjective sometimes, and more about how your body responds to the incident. So now let's get back to the present day. Here we are with less happy hormones to begin with. And let's say we get into a relationship with a narcissist or an abusive person, and then come the consistent insults and emotional attacks. And this can happen over a span of months to years. You may have dealt with things like gaslighting, isolation, ridicule, rejection, just to name a few. And that's on a prolonged basis if you're seeing this person every day. And as we've seen and research continues to support, these things have a lasting impact. So if anyone tells you to get over it already, tell them to sit back down. Or better yet, send them this video. Getting over a relationship with a narcissist usually involves a rewiring of sorts. And that's something you can't do with willpower alone. It's important to take care of yourself in all areas, including these happy hormone boosts that we're looking at today. And for sure, healing is not something you can shame your way into. So for the moment, try to calm down that voice that tells you that you should be in a different place from where you are right now, or you should feel differently than you feel right now. So I keep talking about these happy hormones, but what are they anyway? Well, there are actually 4 feel-good hormones, and they are dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, and oxytocin. Dopamine is probably the most notorious happy hormone we have. It's a neurochemical that's involved in helping us feel pleasure. And there are definitely a lot of artificial ways of boosting dopamine, but they usually come with serious side effects like addiction. But when you think of the aftermath of abuse in terms of how it reduces these happy hormones, it makes sense that so many survivors do turn to drugs and alcohol to help them cope. But we know that's not the way. Because while you may get a rush of dopamine from these substances, it's short-lived and in the long term will only further deplete these happy hormones. And you'll end up feeling even more hopeless than when you began trying to fix the problem in the first place. So for a natural dopamine boost, what can we do? Well, according to research, the top natural boosts come from meditation, exercise, and gratitude. Serotonin is another well-known happy hormone, and this one is responsible for overall well-being. Whenever you're just feeling content, like all is right in the world, you have serotonin to thank. Serotonin is involved in many things, as are all the happy hormones, but for your overall well-being, it may be helpful to note that serotonin is involved in things like memory, sleep, sexuality, and the stress response. Low levels of serotonin are also linked to depression. You may have even heard of a popular class of antidepressant medications called SSRIs, and that stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And these drugs work to block serotonin from being reabsorbed by the nerve cells. hormones. And this is meant to increase the available serotonin. And I mention this not to suggest medication. That's a decision for you and your doctor, but to point out how important serotonin is in regulating your mood. So if you're struggling in the areas where serotonin plays a major role, and especially if you're struggling with anxiety or depression, you may want to pay careful attention to the ways to boost this happy hormone naturally. And you may not like to hear this first one, but don't shoot the messenger. Exercise is one of the best ways to increase serotonin. It works by boosting an amino acid called tryptophan, which the brain uses to make serotonin. And we'll circle back to exercise when we get to endorphins, but for now, the takeaway is that if you want an overall sense of well-being and peace, regular exercise can help you get there. Exposure to the sun's rays can also help, or light therapy. So there you go. There's another reason to fit that morning walk or jog into your routine. Now let's talk about endorphins. I recently learned that the name endorphins comes from two words: endogenous, which means an internal source, in this case in the body, and morphine, which is a painkiller. There are actually 20 endorphins, and we won't get into all of that, but the most studied among them gets released when we exercise. This is what's associated with the runner's high, or the feeling of euphoria after a good workout. So yes, exercise is a great way to boost endorphins. And some other ways to boost these happy hormones are acupuncture, meditation, music, laughter, and ultraviolet light. Sex also boosts endorphins, but be careful about this if you're fresh out of a relationship. Things can get complicated quickly. And last but not least, let's talk about the love hormone, oxytocin. Its main purpose is to facilitate childbirth, but we also produce oxytocin when we're in love. So how do we get more oxytocin when we're feeling unloved and maybe even unlovable? The answer is through connection. Start with a connection that feels natural to you right now. Maybe it's your child or a friend, or maybe it's even just a pet. It's the physical touch here that's most important. This is what gives you that boost of oxytocin. So the next time someone asks you if you need a hug, consider that they might know what they're talking about. You might actually need that boost of oxytocin in that moment. And I want you to know that this works even if you're actually longing from a hug from someone else. You might think, well, I don't want a hug from you. I want a hug from this other person. Listen, just take the hug. It might make you feel a little bit better. So no surprise that exercise and music are also good ways to boost oxytocin. And even if the lift is temporary, the more you feel good, the more you're inviting those happy hormones to come out and play. So if you ask me, there are two strong takeaways here. The first is the way you're feeling isn't your fault. Second, stop putting off that exercise. It's the one thing that boosts all four happy hormones, and it doesn't have to be strenuous or difficult to work. And for the last way to boost those happy hormones, consider trying affirmations. Research shows that a daily affirmation practice activates the reward center in your brain, which can help release more happy hormones. If you need a little help in that area, I have a 7-day program with daily affirmations and gratitude prompts. Remember, gratitude also boosts the happy hormone dopamine. And these things can totally help jumpstart your journey. I'll link to that program in the card and the description for anyone who might be interested. And if you'd like some targeted affirmations for what you might be going through, along with some tips to help you create your own affirmations, you're going to want to watch this video right here. I hope you find all of this as fascinating as I do. And most of all, I hope you found this video helpful. And if you did, please go ahead, like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.